Jeff Rich here from the Burning Archive, and welcome to my Geopolitics and History live show. This is going to be the first, I think, in a series of programs that I'm going to do regularly at this time, I think, at least for the next 4 to 8 weeks. We'll see how they go. We'll do it regularly and build the audience. And I'm going to do a regular show reviewing how world events are shaping up in a deeper, longer view of history, to try to share some of my insights into world politics and history, and help you understand how this world is changing, and whether, if you like, there is a new meta, sort of a bit of a gaming term, most effective tactics available, or the basic rules that are discernible in how the game can be played to best advantage. Is there a new meta emerging in world politics, world international relations, and what is it? And does, if you like, the India-China relationship best represent what this new meta is? It is a big relationship, and at the moment it is really very much a hot issue. In fact, today, the outcomes of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting in, I'm not quite sure where it is in China, Tianjin, I think it is. I might have got that wrong. That meeting has concluded, and the outcomes, I'll bring you some of the outcomes, are hot off the press. I haven't been able to find the actual resolution, the outcome statement so far, but I do have a couple of the interpretations of the outcomes of the meeting from foreign ministers. Now, my Australian audience might also be interested in Anthony Albanese's trip to China. The outcomes of that meeting are also clear. Has Australia pivoted to China in a fit of progressive patriotism? I'm not really sure that is the case, but it is nonetheless a significant meeting that is a bit of a improvement from where Australia-China relations were a couple of years ago, but in the context of the US government very much pressuring China to, frankly, make a preemptive declaration of war against China, to commit to deploying nuclear submarines against China if there were a military conflict over Taiwan. So that's a bit of a preview of the show today. Now, let me just take a little breather and ask you all to like and show your thanks, if you wish, down on the stream, and do throw in your comments and chats as well, both live and as you sort of watch this on the replay. I'm mainly doing this live in order to, for the viewers who watch it on replay. Most people do watch these lives on replay, but it does help me just have a little slot here to produce the show, and I'd really appreciate your support in boosting the Burning Archive YouTube channel in the algorithm, and sharing some of my insights with a broader audience. Now, do you get a sense that something is changing in how world politics is played right now? For example, Donald Trump makes threats, and the world kind of shrugs their shoulders. The world, I guess the countries around the world, shrug their shoulders and mock them. For example, here's an excerpt from Sergei Lavrov's discussion of the latest Trump threat to, apply heavy sanctions on countries trading with Russia after 50 days. And Tariq Cyril Amar, who does a fantastic show on the new Cold War, or Cold War 2.0, with Gevork Amassian at Syriana Analysis, which I highly recommend viewers watch. Tariq quotes Sergei Lavrov saying, "The challenge of Trump is not how to recognise when he's made a turn, it's to know when it's the last one. And if it is not the last one, as it never is, then how long will it last?" And then we also have another example. It wasn't so long ago that the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, standing up for Australian interests above all else, said that Australia did not want Russia in the region after a comment or reports of cooperation between Russia and Indonesia, military cooperation between Russia and Indonesia. So Australia did not want that Pacific power, Russia, in the Indo-Pacific, apparently. But at the most recent ASEAN meeting, Russia and ASEAN developed further their strategic partnership. Of course, Subianto Prabowo, or the Indonesian president, sat together with Vladimir Putin at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and both showed their mutual respect quite clearly. But the Indonesian foreign minister, after recent threats by Donald Trump, or decisions by Donald Trump to apply tariffs to Indonesian products, has simply said, well, that is the price of sovereignty. We are not going to change our minds on matters. And just today, the Jakarta Globe reports that the Indonesian energy minister has said that Indonesia may scrap plans to import US energy commodities if Washington refuses to lower tariffs on Indonesian goods. The world of unilateral orders and declarations from the United States forcing the third world, the assumed colonial countries, the old parts of the European empires, to just salute and say, how high do you want us to jump? Those days are gone. That is part of the new meta of geopolitics. And once authority and prestige and status and the mercurial nature of power like that disappears, it is very hard for it to get back. The strangest thing about power is very much, authority is very much like beauty in the eye of the beholder. You can believe however many grand strategies you think you have. But if you actually can't get people to respond positively out of their own autonomous decisions, then your authority is slipping. And then most perhaps importantly, and very much the theme of this show, is India and China do seem to be developing their rapprochement. Of course, India-China relationships have sort of gone into a bit of a difficult dip, especially since 2020, aggravated by the border dispute, which actually saw, direct armed conflict between India and China in 2020, further aggravated by involvement of China in the recent operation in supporting Pakistan in the recent conflict following the terrorist attack at Pahalgam, and of course having a very long history. And I'm at my Substack at jeffrich.substack, I'm actually doing my current focus on my world history tour is India and South Asia, and the post coming up this week is about partition in 1947, which is so essential to understand these events. But this picture here you can see is of External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and President of China, Xi Jinping, meeting on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting. And we actually even have the outcomes of some of these discussions as well, but I will get to that a little bit later in the show. So this relationship is very important too, because it doesn't need mediation from Donald Trump. It doesn't. It may be assisted by mediation from Russia, but India and China are the big Asian sisters who are doing it for themselves, working through their complex and long-standing but a relationship which still has some significant troubled spots. And again, this is a key part of the new meta of geopolitics that's not necessarily conveyed by a multipolar world, the idea of a multipolar world, because often the thought about the multipolar world is it still all radiates out from the United States out to others. But in fact, what is happening is all those different parts of the world are developing their own relationships and, if you like, bypassing the United States. The United States is no longer the central node of the world, not in trade, not in economics, increasingly not in diplomacy. And as we'll see, even in cultural initiatives, things are developing as well. And then let me just check. We obviously are also witnessing the rapid advance and the intensification of the bombardment of Ukraine by Russia, which is placing pretty extreme pressure, I would have thought, on the Ukrainian military defences, but also significant pressure on their social structure as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but what we're also seeing is some of the cracks appearing in the European diplomatic alignment. There's been a significant incident involving Hungary and a Hungarian man being beaten to death in prison after being picked up by the bussification, the mobilized, the conscription, the press gangs in Ukraine, and you can see here Viktor Orban is also referring to the need to rethink the nature of the federation, if you like, of the European states. There is growing pressure emerging on the solidity of NATO's support. Hungary, Slovakia are having increasing doubts. Slovenia has begun a process of, I guess, a plebiscite or a referendum on whether to leave NATO. And Spain and several other countries, including, I think, Ireland, have also, broken from the general EU-NATO pact and started to be more critical of Israel, including potentially apply various sanctions against Israel. So the different groupings within Europe are also emerging. And so this is another dimension of the new meta of geopolitics. It's no longer just a two-sided game. It's not the West versus the rest. Even the West is significantly divided in terms of different perspectives, different cultures, different political approaches. And we can see that both between the United States and Europe, but also between within Europe itself. And yeah, thanks for everyone joining me online. I'll sort of come back to the chat maybe a bit later on, so do send in your questions or whatever on the chat. I was just checking in on the chat stream there in a second. It's a bit hard to do too many things all at once. Again, do me a favor and I'll press that like button and show your thanks. It helps spread the stream to a larger number of viewers. Now, although there are fissures or cracks emerging in the NATO-European solid support behind the US and behind standing with Ukraine, clearly Mark Rutte is very much repeating Daddy's line. Secretary General of NATO, who notoriously described Donald Trump as Daddy. Although, to be honest, a lot of geopolitical commentators in the United States are both critical and supportive of the current administration tend to adopt a very patronising attitude towards European politicians and strategists. So it's hardly anything that they haven't said already. But I think increasingly NATO is revealing itself as a arm of the US military empire. And so one should not say NATO when one means European leaders. If one's referring to what NATO is doing, it is really very much it is the pro-American Atlanticist elite within Europe. They are really J.D. Vance's true enemy within in Europe. It's not the people in Brussels, although they might be part of it as well. It is the pro-American Atlanticist elite who are really Europe's true enemy within. And even in Australia, there is debates going on. There's been a debate over whether, indeed, AUKUS should proceed. A significant comment here from the former head of the Foreign Affairs Department in Australia, Peter Varghese, who says, well, the headline says, I ran DFAT, that's the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I hope Elbridge Colby sinks AUKUS for Australia. And this is in the major daily newspaper, like business newspaper in Australia, the Financial Review, I guess the equivalent of like the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times or something like that within Australia. Very much sees itself as an elite opinion journal, and the debate on AUKUS is spilling over. Not a particularly insightful piece, I would say, but there's also a lot of hopes emerging that Mr. Albanese's visit to China, which is actually a part of an annual scheduled meeting between the Chinese and Australian leaderships, has led to a lot of hope from some quarters and a lot of speculation from others, such as Arnaud Bertrand, that this is a major significant event, a sign of things really changing, that Albanese's met with Xi and not with Trump. But in reality, this annual meeting has been occurring for 10 years or so. So it's simply a reflection, again, of the fact that things are not all about America. We can't interpret every geopolitical event with reference to Donald Trump or what silly thing Donald Trump has said today. The fact that Australia and China have a regular dialogue arrangement between their leaders when China has been Australia's largest trading partner for the last 16 years is hardly surprising. And I might get back to some of the outcomes of that meeting overall a little bit later. So there's some practical examples from the news just in the last couple of days that really sort of suggests that the meta of geopolitics is changing. There's a new set of rules, written and unwritten, to play the game of geopolitics, or, as I prefer to call it, of world history. And those rules are no longer all written by the West, by America, by the European and American powers. All roads do not lead to the new Rome in Washington. Indeed, the roads to Beijing and Delhi and Jakarta and even Moscow and St. Petersburg are equally significant. Davos is being overtaken by the Raisina dialogue or even by the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And speaking of the Raisina dialogue, Dr. S. Jaishankar, indeed, earlier this year, in I think it was March or April, was speaking at that dialogue, which is a kind of, if you like, in simple terms, the sort of Indian Davos, a sort of an annual or more than annual meeting of major decision makers, investors, journalists, etc., to spread India's soft power. That's right, again, the rules, the meta of the world is changing because it's not only America who does this, it's India, it's Russia, it's Indonesia, it's China, it's all the countries, the major countries of the world. And at that dialogue, Dr. S. Jaishankar referred to the world order undergoing a great churn, and it really does require new thinking, new conversations, fresh ideas and creative solutions. Again, the world has changed. People need to work out what the new meta of this great churn to the world order is and respond to that rather than to respond to the same old sort of, assumptions of realist geopolitical theory or liberal international relations theory, whatever it would be. But I guess the question is, will the United States and its allies bring the temple down on their heads when they realise the game really has changed? They are no longer overpowered, if I can continue to use the sort of gaming metaphor. They can't just spam some magic macro button and kill all their competitors. They actually need to sort of work out how to conduct themselves a little bit more intelligently in this new meta of geopolitics. So I'm going to be exploring those issues a little bit, and I think I might have said early on in the show that this is, I think, part of a new initiative I have on my channel. I think what I'm planning to do is to do some weekly live streams. I've been inspired a little bit by Abhijit Chavda's Geo-Strategy weekly intel briefings. I don't know if anyone in the audience has caught them, but they're really great shows, and they do sort of show that he does sort of emphasize some of the most impactful events, but also looks at some of the soft signs of change. And for me, I think I don't want to get too caught up in the day-to-day events around politics and military issues. That's not really my strength, but I do perhaps want to emphasize a little bit more than some other commentators do some of the deeper historical trends underway, some of the deeper cultural dimensions underway, and indeed some of those sort of that longer view on things, and the complexity of some of the cultural associations. Indeed, just going back to this quote from Dr. S.J. Shankar, when he says the world is undergoing a great churn, a Western audience, particularly an American audience, will think churn is like wasteful business, sort of losing customers, all that sort of thing. It's just a wasteful, purposeless activity. But Dr. S.J. Shankar, of course, has written 2 books, The India Way and Why Bharat Matters. And he, with both of those books, refers to the 2 great Indian epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana. And so when he says churn, he is absolutely, I would imagine, it maybe audience from India and South Asia can confirm this for me, but he is definitely, I'd say, referring to the churning of this ocean of milk in the sort of Hindu mythology, which, of course, is represented at Angkor Wat and in many places. And it's kind of like a creation myth, I guess, of the world where the churning throws up a whole lot of good stuff and a whole lot of bad stuff. It creates a new complex situation that people need to adapt to. So churn does not mean necessarily a wasteful process there. He's referring to a unstoppable process that is still generating new facts for people to respond to, if you like, to realise that there is a new meta emerging in geopolitics. So this is what I mean by the new meta of geopolitics. Now, let me just have a little drink there, and while I do that, just encourage people to go over to my Substack at jeffrich.substack.com. And you can, I do weekly book recommendations, deep dives, and slow reads. I've been doing a slow read of Nobel Literature Prize winner Olga Tokarczuk's amazing novel, The Books of Jacob, which, is a fantastic journey through history. And I've done a world tour of China, of the United States, currently doing India, and will later in the year be doing Europe and Russia, and really giving you some insights from the best quality, current day history out there that help you make sense of the world. So do check that out. So when I refer to this new meta, this is something I think I'm going to be coming back to and exploring week to week in this live stream. And I think it's, I mean something more than just the fact that there's a new or a change to the order of the world. It's something more than the fact that we've moved from a unipolar or bipolar to a multipolar world. It's really the fact that our way of understanding geopolitics, our way of understanding world history, the stories we tell ourselves about geopolitics and history have changed, or have suddenly found themselves, those stories are no longer as credible and convincing or as powerful as explanations. I think one of the classic cases here is, well, both the liberal international relations model of a liberal model of international relations and John Mearsheimer's sort of realist model of international relations. Both tell a kind of a story about how world politics works, about hegemons and either good hegemons or, badass hegemons, depending on which school you belong to and how they interact. But I think what we're seeing is that explanation of things simply is not sufficient to explain the fact that there are so many more players in the world today and no one is necessarily wanting to be a hegemon. And world order is a complex mix of many multilateral organizations. So I'm really, I guess, drawing on the gaming analogy of meta, meaning the sort of underpinning strategy that sort of people discover by playing the game at a higher level, and that they can do better at the game by sort of using the principles of that meta. Meta is actually I discovered this week in researching this show, is actually a acronym too. It means most effective tactics available in the gameplay. And again, it's not a grand strategy. It's not a designed process. It's something that emerges from all the different equations that apply if you play a computer game. The nature of the classes, how they interact, their strengths and their weaknesses, their relative performance against each other. No one can really quite predict until things play out how that will work out. But to play the game extremely well, you need to kind of observe the processes and events quite carefully and draw out empirically, if you like, rather than theories of international relations, how these things work. So the multipolar world is a part of it, and it is definitely emerging. But, one shouldn't fixate on just the poles, the great powers. One should also look at the processes that are changing in the world. And this is why I find Kishore Mahbubani's comment that we're in a multipolar, multi-civilizational and multilateral world quite compelling. And I'd even go further that when you look at great states like China or India or Europe or perhaps also the United States, you actually have multi-civilizational great states. India is a complex blend of, the Persian, the Hindu, the Muslim, the British, the other sort of traditions and peoples of India. So it is not like a single unified civilization state. And when one looks at these sort of underpinning processes, you get a much more complex picture of how the world is churning, to use Dr. S. Jaishankar's term, across many dimensions of war, economy, society, politics, culture, environment. Actual physical processes in the world are changing as well. The astonishing industrial development of China is a profoundly important physical event, I guess, as much as the Industrial Revolution in Europe was in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. But also in diplomacy. And this is where Shanghai Cooperation Organization is quite important. There is a term that's quite common in sort of Chinese geopolitical discourse, which is to refer to the unprecedented changes not seen for 1,000 years. and it is, I think, a powerful phrase, but it's also one I think that does not always quite. It can, I think, lull people into a false sense of events happening like in cycles or in a coordinated way. And I'm a little bit skeptical of it and think maybe the idea that Jaishankar has of churn is also a significant thing. But it's interesting too, there was a very interesting exchange between Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, and some journalists at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago, where this sort of issue came up. The idea that China, Russia, the BRICS are trying to put in place a new order of the world. There's a certain phrase that always gets flagged by YouTube that I'm trying to avoid, but you know what I mean. And let me just play a little bit of that for you now.
The statements are normalizing the fact that a country might kill the president of another country. That's basically the conclusion of last week's statement.
So this is at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum plenary event where Vladimir Putin is seated next to Prabowo Subianto from Indonesia, a vice premier from China, major officials from, I think, Bahrain and from South Africa. And the journalist is saying there's been these statements from the United States about assassinating the Iranian leader, and what kind of rules is that? So it's in this context that he puts this question to Vladimir Putin.
Это, по сути дела, вывод из тех заявлений, которые мы слышали за последние несколько недель. Да, безусловно, можно говорить о том, что духовный лидер Ирана, строго говоря, не глава государства, но, тем не менее, Али Хаминеи обладает необходимыми полномочиями для того, чтобы наслаждаться принципами международной защиты. Тем не менее, неважно, какую позицию вы занимаете по Ирану, когда мы пытаемся нормализовать сам факт того, что президент одной страны может призывать к президента другой страны, можем ли мы говорить о том, что возникают какие-то новые правила? Очевидно, эти правила, если о них так можно говорить, противоречат.
So I guess the standard expectation would be at this point, Vladimir Putin says, this is the set of rules that we would expect in the world order that we are implementing. It's not the Western rules-based order, it's the BRICS-based rules-based order. But his answer surprised and, if you like, delighted the panel and the audience. Let's listen to what he says.
Тем ценностям, о которых мы здесь говорили, не правда ли?
Colleagues have spoken here, and I try to jot down a few things for myself to recall them later. I also noted what you, dear colleague, have just said. You mentioned the following when you were debating with my colleague from the People's Republic of China. You said, and I wrote it down, the Russian Federation and China are forming a new world order. Russia and China are not forming a new world order. We are merely formalizing it. The new world order is emerging naturally. It's like the sunrise. You can't stop it. What we are doing What we are doing is simply formalizing it and perhaps clearing the way for this process so that it becomes more balanced and meets the interests of the overwhelming majority of countries. We very much hope that all countries will become aware of this and will ultimately understand, as I've already said, that this approach, the approach of finding solutions, is better than the approach of pressure. And in fact, better than the essentially neo-colonial world order that humanity has lived under for many, many centuries, if not millennia.
So there you go. That is really quite a significant statement. And what I really want to draw out there is, if you like, it's a very much like a historian's idea. It's not a theoretician of international relations idea. He's not saying we're moving from one system to another. He's saying, and the translation is not great. That's a sort of improvised translation, and you can read the translation that's on the Kremlin website, which is a little bit more finessed, I think. But he's basically saying we can't control these events. We need to use my metaphor, work out what the meta is of this new emerging world, work out what this natural process like the sunrise is, and shape and formalize and push it in certain directions. So I think it's quite an interesting observation, and I do feel at times that perhaps the Russian and Indian foreign ministers or foreign policy elites may even have a sharper sense of this this historical feature, if you like, this world historical process, than even the Chinese leadership, despite the importance of the greatest changes in 100 years dialogue. But I might have more to say about that on the channel before too long. So I want to skip ahead now. I was going to talk a little bit about Ukraine, but I don't know if I'm really going to have enough time to talk about that. I will be doing another video soon in my sort of Ukraine endgame series, but clearly things are getting pretty tough for Ukraine at the moment. But I do want to point out a wonderful video by Pascal Lataz, which looked carefully at this article by Dmitry Trenin, which is available in one form on Russia Today, but in another form at this website there. Do go to Pascal Lataz's Neutrality Studies channel to check it out. And it is by Dmitry Trenin, who was very much a pro-Western intellectual, lived in the United States, I think worked in the United States for a long time, has returned to Russia, and is now essentially saying World War III has already begun, but not everyone understands it. That if you like, he's saying there is a new meta to world war as well. If we keep expecting World War III to look like World War I did or World War II did, we will misunderstand it. It's actually occurring now, but in a different form to what we expect. It's quite a confronting article in the sense that it's grim to think that we could, in fact, be well into World War III, but it's very much worth reading. And I might return to that topic of how war is changing in the new meta of geopolitics and another live stream before too long. And then I also wanted to briefly comment on the Australian situation with Xi Jinping and all of that, and the outcomes of Australia's meeting with Xi Jinping are now out. And I won't go into too much detail, but there is both a Chinese and Australian readout of it. And I think the Australian readout will be pretty well available to people in the Anglo world. So let me just refer to the Chinese readout as well. And he does talk about the significant improvement in the relationships between, just give me 1 minute, I'll just make this all a little bit bigger for you. Significant improvement in the relationships between China and Australia. They really did hit a low point, I guess, I don't know, 2017, 2020, 22 kind of thing. Was a really dark time in those relationships. But they have emerged from that low point and things have been improving. And again, there's a couple of comments here that perhaps are worth emphasizing. No matter how the global landscape shifts, these principles of seeking common ground and treating each other as equals, respecting differences and looking for mutually beneficial cooperation should be the guiding compass for both countries. And a range of things about improving people-to-people ties and all that sort of stuff. But I also want to just emphasize this final comment here. This is from the Chinese side. Fourth, the two sides should jointly address risks and challenges. In a volatile and turbulent world, all countries should work together to uphold international fairness and justice, safeguard multilateralism and free trade, very much a comment directed to the Trump system, defend the international system with the United Nations at its core and the international order based on international law, not the rules-based international order, and make the international order more just and equitable. A pretty firm statement, I would have said, from Xi to Anthony Albanese. And then there is just one point I really wanted to emphasize here in Anthony Albanese's remarks, as reported by China, which is just this as in the regular dialogue between the leaders, serves the common interests of both countries and contributes to regional stability and prosperity. Australia remains committed to the One China policy. Hear that, Elbridge Colby? Australia remains committed to the One China policy and does not support Taiwan independence. And Australia is ready to maintain exchanges and dialogue with China at all levels to increase mutual trust. So that is the significant outcome of that. I should also note that in the we have a very interesting press conference from Sergei Lavrov following the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting that brought up a couple of quite interesting points. Very much emphasized that this meeting was preparing the ground for the Leaders Summit in, I think it's late August, early September. But there's one particular part of this thing that I thought was particularly significant, and that is this little paragraph here, which I'll just read out for you. An in-depth exchange was held on key regional and international matters, as well as the situation within the SCO space. Now, the situation within the SCO space includes all the conflicts within Eurasia right now: Iran, Gaza, Yemen, India, Pakistan, China, India, and so on. And the ministers underscored the importance of enhancing coordination among states in shaping a multipolar world order with the United Nations at its core. The meeting reaffirmed the shared commitment of deepening cooperation within the SCO as a vital pillar of an emerging architecture of equal and indivisible security across Eurasia. And this was also in the context of agreeing that there would be, I'm just checking whether it's in here or on another media release, but Sergei Lavrov has also said that there will be an SCO plus sort of organisation in the next year or so. Over the next year, an SCO plus summit, I think even in connection with the Leaders Summit in late August, early September, which will involve 30-odd additional countries in the sort of Eurasian area. And they are talking about collective and indivisible security across Eurasia, not just across, Russia and China, not just across Central Asia, across Eurasia, including going into Europe, of course, and, of course, the West Pacific. And this is in the context of China and Russia agreeing very much that there is a desire long-term, basically, for America to be out of the equation, for the countries of Eurasia to provide the collective and indivisible security of Eurasia, not for the United States to do it on behalf of them for the benefit of the offshore balancing power of the United States. So I think that is really quite a significant outcome of this meeting. And I should also note that in his press conference, he commented specifically on Australia's participation in AUKUS and other events which were risking nuclear proliferation, risking extension, he said, of NATO control of the entirety of Eurasia, and it was a major concern. So Australia, God bless us, have really put ourselves right at the heart, right at the vortex of America's, grand plan to dominate and maintain its partition of Eurasia, as I've described in other videos as well. And what's more, done so with a highly risky strategy of nuclear proliferation with its nuclear submarines deal. So quite a significant outcome from there, and I think I will be returning to that whole issue of collective security across Eurasia in further live streams, because again, this is part of the new meta of geopolitics, that it's no longer the old silly Mackinder idea that someone from outside of Eurasia controls the world island to control the world. It is a case of sorry, just something strange happened on my little screen there. It is a case of those countries being resourceful enough, intelligent enough, well prepared enough in order to actually manage their security by themselves without, Halford Mackinder or Zbigniew Brzezinski or Steve Bannon or some MI6 agent or some CIA spook's grand plan to control the world. All right. Now, can everyone just confirm maybe if anyone could just confirm with me everything is okay with the screen? Just having a couple of funny things happen on my little monitor here. So I hope everything is still okay. Just if someone gives us a thumbs up, that'd be great. And while I'm just gathering my thoughts, do press that like button and show your thanks, or share the video with someone else, and do go over to jeffrich.substack.com. You can join me there and also join my world tour, world history tour. And I should also mention, while I'm just pivoting to the India-China discussion, that what I've also recently done is prepared 2 courses or programs which you can get to through the links in the video description below. One is my Geopolitics and History Masterclass, where I give you 7 essential lessons on geopolitics from world history based on my 30 plus years experience as a government official. I basically brief you on the 7 essential things as if you were an incoming foreign minister. It's a great program, and I think everyone would get a lot from it, and you can check that out in the video description below. And my shorter, simpler program, Stay Sane in a Mad World, How to Use History to Stay Sane When the World Goes to War, where I take you through, in 90 minutes, some of the key things that you can do to get control of the narratives, make good decisions about the news, control your emotional reactions, and assess all the different arguments there are out there. So do check those out in the video description below. Buying one of those will absolutely help me continue to my work, as would be becoming a paid subscriber at jeffrich.substack.com, so I can continue to share my insights about history and the world as it is becoming here on YouTube for free. Okay, let's talk about India and China relations. Now, this was a bit of the headline act, I guess, coming into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Over the last few weeks, there have been significant tensions, or last few months, I guess, significant tensions between India and China. I have been checking the different media sources, mainstream, alternative, Indian, Pakistani, Chinese, American, of course, and some of the Europeans as well. I tend not to bother too much with the Australian media, but, that's another issue. And there have been quite a few issues that have been inflaming tensions. There was a whole series of speculation at one point whether there was a kind of a palace coup being engineered against Xi Jinping, and indeed whether the palace coup was driven by people either supportive or more hostile towards conflict with India. India and China clearly have fought a significant war in the early 1960s, and the two rising great powers of Asia, in a way, their mutual success is essential to the success of a new Eurasia, of the new meta, of the world and of geopolitics, yet there are significant tensions of both a military, a cultural, a political, and a economic nature. So let's just go through some of those. There has been the Operation Sindoor, and this was the conflict between China and Pakistan that followed the terrorist attack at Pahalgam in early May, I think, from memory. And it was it only lasted, it was less than the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, but it ended in a cessation of hostilities that followed Pakistan seeking that cessation of hostilities from India. But there has been a significant back and forward in the media from the different parties claiming more or less success of the operations. And it's quite a fascinating story. Of course, I'm not a military analyst, but my overall assessment is that India was really quite successful in Operation Sindoor, and I might well go into that in more detail in another video. But it's also, I guess, repositioned Indian strategic thought in many ways. Indeed, General Shankar from Gunner's Shot really says Operation Sindoor has really changed the game from an Indian strategic geopolitical strategy point of view. Then we also have the issue of the border, which between India and China, which is a bit of an demarcated border where there was conflict in 2020. And that significant diplomatic effort has gone into de-escalating tensions about, and there were some positive noises about that in recent times. And it is a significant conflict. There are limitations, if not complete restrictions, I believe, on direct flights between India and China. So it is not at all an insignificant issue. In particular, there was one particular religious event that was enabled by greater cooperation and de-escalation of tension recently, I think in the Jammu Kashmir area, and that has also been a significant development. There have also been trade tensions. There have been rare earth bans placed by India on China. By China on India, refusing to supply rare earths. There's been tension over India's growing role in the production of, smartphones and other technology products. There has been tension over the negotiation between India and the United States of its free trade agreement, or its negotiation of the whole tariff issue, and a whole range of other sort of issues. And even leading into BRICS, there was a bit of scuttlebutt from some of the alternative media that India was really the joker in the pack, or the knave in the pack of BRICS that couldn't really be trusted, wasn't really part of the team, was really a kind of a Western country in a BRICS clothing. And it is, I think, ultimately was proven wrong, but nonetheless it did reflect differing views amongst the strategic communities, let's say, of both countries around the role of BRICS. There's been the Quad issue, which is again an issue that India has negotiated relatively delicately, both finding practical cooperation between Japan, Australia and the United States, while also not wanting to be drawn into some of the grander plans of the United States to contain China through the Quad, or to extend the Quad to a broader alliance of powers against India. And there's also been significant tension, I guess, around China's role in supplying weapons, intelligence, and satellite data and all that sort of military sort of thing in the conflict with Pakistan. So a complex series of tensions. Oh, and of course, in the mix of all that, then there has been the debate about the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama in Tibet. And of course, Tibet was central to the war between China and Japan that was fought in the early 1960s. In 1959, the Dalai Lama fled Tibet, came to India, and has sort of been kind of resident there ever since. There's clearly significant cultural attachment to Buddhism in India. It is, after all, the home, the birthplace of Buddhism, and the dispute, I guess, over the succession to the Dalai Lama between China and India. It's worth a full discussion another time, but again, that is raising significant tensions, different expectations, conflicts between different cultures and political systems, and I guess perceptions and roles in the world. So the one really crucial thing, though, I really think is important to note about this is that these issues between China and India are gradually being worked upon by the senior leadership of both countries. If you check the media of both countries, you will see there is significant doubt and significant mistrust of each country. And after all, let's face it, these two countries together represent 2.8 billion people. It's if there's not going to be a bit of debate and differences of opinion when you're talking about communities of nearly 3 billion people, I don't really know what you're expecting. So there are going to be significant tensions, but certainly since the BRICS Kazan summit, when Xi and Modi met, there has been a long discussion about a thaw in relationships, and it does seem that Dr. S. Jaishankar's visit to Xi and some of the discussion around the BRICS summit does tend to confirm that as well. In particular, when Dr. S. Jaishankar met with Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, he said this. He said, we have made good progress in the past 9 months for the normalization of our bilateral relations. It is a result of the resolution of friction along the border and our ability to maintain peace and tranquility there. This is the fundamental basis for mutual strategic trust and for smooth and let me just bring this up for you. That might be a good idea, Martin. There we go. So this paragraph here, this is the fundamental basis for mutual strategic trust and or smooth development of our bilateral relations. It is now incumbent on us to address other aspects related to the border, including de-escalation. As neighbouring nations, and they are, and major economies in the world, and they are, there are various facets and dimensions of our ties. Measures towards normalising our people-to-people exchanges can certainly foster mutually beneficial cooperation. It is also essential in this context that restrictive trade measures and roadblocks are avoided, e.g. rare earths and issues around smartphones and that sort of thing. I hope to discuss these issues in further detail. And more broadly, China has grown very significantly. India is on a growth path as well. And these two, the two countries in the world that have more than 1 billion people, and there are only two countries in the world that together that have more than 1 billion people. So they are unique countries, if you like. They need to be able to make space, I guess, for their mutual growth, and their demographics and their economic development paths and their cultural values are different. So those paths will be different. But India is sensitive to avoid a crushing of its economic development, especially given its experience of colonialism. So it is protective of its, domestic social context as well. So it is a very important issue for these two countries to navigate. And then let me focus then on paragraph 8, which is important. Oh, hang on. I'm highlighting the wrong area. So, stable and constructive ties between India and China are not only to our benefit, but that of the world as well. This is best done by handling relations on the basis of mutual respect, mutual interest, and mutual sensitivity. And there is a lot, I've got to say, in the alternative media space, there is, a lot of the people who are critical of America and supportive of China, sometimes I find are a little bit insensitive towards Indian perspectives on the world. We have also earlier agreed that differences should not become disputes, nor should competition ever become conflict. On this foundation, we can now continue to develop our ties along a positive trajectory. And that kind of rhetorical line has been a fairly consistent statement from Jaishankar for a couple of years now. And then finally, he emphasises, and this is very important, our meeting today will also include an exchange of views on global and regional issues. Tomorrow, we will be meeting in the format of the SCO, whose primary mandate is to combat terrorism, separatism, and extremism. This is a shared concern, and India hopes that zero tolerance for terrorism will be strongly upheld. Now, I haven't seen an actual outcome of the meeting, but this is, I guess the key issue. There's been a little bit of commentary about the optics of whether the Indian foreign minister was like the Pakistani foreign minister in the sort of final final sort of group photo was shown with holding hands with, standing next to not Xi Jinping, to Wang Yi, and who was, I think, standing next to Sergei Lavrov, and in Dr. S. Jaishankar was a couple of people to the right. I think people should not over-interpret that particular event. I wonder if that is a little bit of a compensatory thing for Pakistan after getting maybe a bit of some criticism from the other Shanghai Cooperation Organization members for its approach to terrorism. But we will see how it develops over time. It does seem to me, however, that this relationship between India and China is really, really fundamental, and particularly if depending on where you get your news from, it's really important to get multiple sources of news on it. It's important to tune into the Indian media, which is compared to Anglophone, like Western, Australian, American, British media, I find, much better informed, much more intelligent level of discussion, and much more vital and diverse. But it does, I mean, obviously represents an Indian perspective, but you need to understand the range and intensity of feelings on that side as well. And I think there is quite a few. But similarly, there are plenty of channels out there that offer perspectives from Pakistan, and there are also multiple perspectives within India as well. But it does seem to me that India and China are on a pathway to sorting out a more constructive relationship together. And in a way, this is, again, representative of the new meta of geopolitics, of the fact that everything is not about Europe and the United States. Russia, India, China, and the countries of the SCO will be doing it for themselves over the years ahead. And in doing so, they are going to change the processes, change the distribution of power, change the culture and the manner of the way diplomacy is conducted, the language and the terms and the priorities for how it's conducted. And it sounds like SCO is going to be becoming a more expansive organisation with SCO+. And there is one other very interesting fact about the year ahead. India is going to have the presidency of the BRICS in 2020, from now to 2026. And of course, India had the presidency of the G20 in, I think it was 2023, maybe. I think it was 2023. And did an exceptional job of doing so, and explicitly went about, being the voice of the global south. Now, sometimes India and China can be rivals for that role, but I think India has done an exceptionally good job with its diplomacy in being voice of the global south. Narendra Modi has just done a major international tour through Africa, Ghana, and I think also South America as well, and so in the lead up to the BRICS summit. So India is a strong global voice for that is a recognised leader of or voice of the global south. Did a lot of work in coordinating input from over 100 countries to not just sort of represent its own perspective on developmental issues, but to generally represent a more consensus viewpoint. And so it will be bringing that into things. And the most recent Rio summit has also, BRICS summit has also explicitly stated that the BRICS countries support India and Brazil joining the United Nations Security Council. So that, again, is a significant diplomatic point. But over the next year, while India is president of BRICS, its, if you like, companion organisation on the more security side of things, the organisation that ultimately aspires to be the backbone of collective security arrangements within Eurasia, without the involvement of external powers, i.e. the United States or Britain, that organisation is going to be, the presidency will be chaired by China. So these two crucial Asian powers, great states, the rising sisters who have, squabbled, if you like, a bit over time, are now placed at a unique time with unique capabilities with a growing, expanding, influential organisation on the diplomatic economic cooperation side, BRICS, and a growing security, collective security, to some degree also regional, infrastructural, cultural cooperation as well, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it may well be, and SCO too is expanding to have this sort of partnership program. So we have this situation where India and China have a unique opportunity to perhaps put some of these irritants in their relationship behind them and forge a new direction as the new meta of geopolitics emerges. And I certainly hope they are successful. So look, that is pretty much my program for today. I can see it's getting a bit dark outside and I need to prepare dinner. Let me just mention that that I did do a video a couple of weeks ago on the India-China relationship, setting out some of these ideas, and that's in the video description below, and you might want to check that out. And you should also very much check out my Substack at jeffrich.substack.com and join my world history tour. Check my tour of China, check my tour of the United States, and check my current tour of India. And coming up on Saturday, I'll be talking about partition, which of course, I guess is one of the root causes of the conflict between India and Pakistan at the moment, although the more immediate cause is the tolerance for terrorism operations against India. And I also would like to mention that I'm actually preparing an article soon on decolonisation. I did do a series, which you can also find on the channel, on the rise and fall of empires, and most last one being on the post-1945 world, where I made the point that the post-1945 world is not just about the liberal rules-based order. Fundamentally, including the dynamics of the Cold War, were about the process of decolonisation, a very complex, contested, and in many ways incomplete process. And as you noted in that comment from Vladimir Putin earlier on, there is a sense that the new meta of the world is moving away from colonialism and neocolonialism and starting to perhaps start what I would describe as a third wave of decolonisation. And the big colonial imperial power that will be whose power will be withdrawn, whose reach across the world will be drawn in that third wave of decolonisation, is of course the United States. So that will be coming up soon. Let me just quickly check in if there are any key questions here that I can respond to. Thanks everyone who's sort of made some comments. I can see some pretty lively discussion in the chat there. And thanks for everyone who's thanked me on about the stuff on the channel. And I see conversations with someone's mentioned conversations among the ruins, and I might check them out. I do appear, and I think I will be appearing later tonight on Jamal Thomas's channel. So if you haven't already checked out Jamal Thomas's channel, do check that out. And it is a great show. So that's about be about 9:15 Australian Eastern Standard Time, or 9 p.m. that is. So in about 4 hours roughly. So do check that out. And yeah, I'll have a chat with the conversation. I'll see what I can do with the conversations with Ruins. And I can see mention to about the Algerian conflict as well. So look, thanks everyone for joining me. If you've got some questions you'd like to ask me as well, if you're watching on the replay, just leave a comment, show your thanks, press that like button, and I will see you again in another stream real soon. Thanks for watching.